a person makes $11,000 a year, that's considered toward poverty level.
In a pointed exchange during the Appropriations Commerce, Justice, Science hearing, Senator John Kennedy pressed Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick on two issues that go to the heart of federal policy: how America measures poverty, and whether billions in broadband funding are actually delivering results. Now, let's dive into the next one. Time to tackle the threat head-on. Let's see how it unfolds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. Mr. Secretary, the Census Bureau is under your jurisdiction, is it not?
Yes, it is.
And the Census Bureau is in charge of defining what it means to be poor or in poverty in America. Is that correct?
I think it does economic analysis for America.
But it also defines poverty level, does it not?
I don't know if it's the defining.
Well, you need to look, because it does.
Okay.
If you know, this isn't a quiz, if you know, what's the percentage of Americans who live at or below the poverty level?
I don't know the percentage.
Okay. It's around 11%. It's been constant. Now, when the Census Bureau defines poverty, they do it by income. You're aware of that. When the Census Bureau defines poverty using income, they only count income that the individual earns or cash income that the individual gets from the federal government. Is that correct?
Well, it includes all sources of their income. I mean, that is the purpose.
Yeah, their income and cash income from the federal government. Is that correct?
Oh, meaning does it include income that they receive from the federal government?
Yeah, cash.
I think so.
Yeah. So if a person makes $11,000 a year, that's considered toward poverty level. But if the person gets a cash payment, let's say in the form of SSI or TANF, that counts too. Is that right?
I'm not certain.
Yeah, it does. Okay. Are you aware that your agency doesn't count non-cash payments from the federal government defining poverty?
I am not.
Are you aware that your agency doesn't count refundable earned income tax credits, or food stamps, or housing subsidies, or utility bill subsidies, or Medicaid, or free school meals? They don't count that. They call it a non-cash payment, and it doesn't count. You aware of that?
It sounds to me that you and I are going to spend some time together and we're going to change it. But I did not know that, and it sounds like something that we should add.
And the purpose of my questioning is not to punish people who need help. The American people are the most generous people in the world. That's why we spend $1.4 trillion a year helping people that other countries would allow to die in a ditch. But your Census Bureau says it's 11% who live at or below the poverty level. That's a lie. It's 1%. If you count as any person with a brain above a single-cell organism would, cash and non-cash payments, they're above the poverty level. And we ought to be honest with the American people and thank them for getting the poverty level down to 1% instead of giving them a curb stomping and calling them selfish. Let me give you a real-life example here. Let's suppose you've got a mom and two kids. According to your Census Bureau, the poverty level for her is $27,000. She makes $11,000 a year, let's say. So she's below the poverty level. But she also qualifies for $3,400 in refundable tax credits based on her $11,000 salary, $9,200 in food stamps, that's for her and her 2 children, $9,500 in housing subsidies, $900 in utility bill subsidies, $16,000 in Medicaid, $3,100 a year in free school lunches, and $6,600 a year in TANF. That's $64,100 a year, tax-free. Is she living in poverty?
Doesn't sound like it.
No, but your Census Bureau counts her as being poor. I'm not saying take away her benefits. I'm saying give the American people a little credit. And I really think you need to change the definition to a definition that looks like somebody designed the damn thing on purpose. Final question, I'm going to hurry, Mr. Chairman. Why don't you just use satellite internet service? Why don't you just use Global Star or Starlink? You said the cost is $4,000 per person in Louisiana. For $600, you can buy a Starlink terminal. Why don't you just do that and do it across America and save a bunch of money?
The states were responsible for determining the best outcome, and sometimes fiber in a dense location can be economically better. Sometimes satellite does not work best on geography.
It can't be cheaper. That's not impossible. It can be cheaper.
Math is, each of the states did their best. We worked it out with them, and we moved on.
I just don't understand. You can buy, I'm not saying do Musk. There are others that just throw it out for bid. But $600 for a terminal versus $4,000 for fiber optic? This is taxpayer money. I'm done. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chairman. I should have known it's you, Shelley. You're much nicer than Jerry. He would have cut me off.
Yeah, Senator Shaheen.
Kennedy's questioning cut straight to a long-standing concern among critics of federal statistics. Are poverty numbers telling the full story? He suggested that official data may understate economic hardship, especially when inflation, regional cost differences, and real purchasing power are taken into account. It's a critique that resonates with many Americans who feel that government metrics don't match their lived experience. Secretary Lutnick, for his part, defended the integrity of federal data collection, pointing to established methodologies used by agencies like the Census Bureau. But the exchange highlighted a deeper tension: whether traditional economic indicators are still adequate in a rapidly changing economy. Kennedy's line of questioning implied that if policymakers rely on incomplete data, the solutions they craft may miss the mark entirely. The conversation then shifted to broadband expansion, a cornerstone of recent federal investment aimed at closing the digital divide. Kennedy raised concerns about whether the massive funding allocated for broadband infrastructure is translating into actual connectivity for underserved communities, particularly in rural America. This is where the stakes become very tangible. Broadband access today isn't just about convenience. It's about access to education, healthcare, remote work, and economic opportunity. Kennedy questioned whether bureaucratic delays, regulatory hurdles, or inefficiencies are slowing progress. In essence, he asked, where's the return on investment? Lutnick emphasized ongoing efforts to deploy funds and build infrastructure, but like many federal programs, the challenge lies in execution. Rolling out broadband nationwide involves coordination across federal, state, and local levels, as well as partnerships with private providers. That complexity can slow timelines and blur accountability, something lawmakers like Kennedy are clearly unwilling to overlook. What made this exchange stand out wasn't just the policy details, but the broader message. Kennedy's questioning reflects a growing skepticism in Washington about whether large-scale government spending is being effectively managed and whether agencies are fully transparent about outcomes. At the same time, Lutnick's responses underscore the administration's position that these programs are long-term investments and that measurable results take time. The tension between urgency and process is a familiar one in public policy, but it's becoming more pronounced as expectations rise. Ultimately, this hearing segment serves as a microcosm of a larger debate. How do we measure success in fighting poverty? How do we ensure infrastructure spending delivers real-world impact? And perhaps most importantly, how do we bridge the gap between government data and public perception? As lawmakers continue to scrutinize these issues, one thing is clear. Both the numbers and the outcomes will remain under the microscope. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next content.